In 1975, over 80% of British households ate fish every single Friday. Not because they wanted to, because that's just what you did. By 1995, that number had collapsed to under 15%. An entire eating culture, gone in 20 years. Today, I'm documenting 15 foods that were absolutely normal in Britain between the 1960s and 1980s. Foods that would baffle anyone else in the world. These aren't just recipes, they're proof of who we were. And you lived through it. You know what's strange? You lived through one of the biggest cultural shifts in British history, and you probably didn't even notice. Between 1960 and 1990, just 30 years, the British dinner table completely transformed. Foods that had been eaten for generations, they simply vanished. And with them went something else, a way of life, a rhythm, a shared understanding of what it meant to be British. I grew up with many of these on our table. My mum made them, my grandmother before her. These foods tell the story of who we were, post-rationing Britain, working-class grit, the era before supermarkets changed everything. Today, we're going from breakfast to dinner, weekday staples to Sunday treats. All the foods that defined us but baffled everyone else. And I want to hear your memories. Drop them in the comments as we go. This isn't just my story, it's ours. If this kind of British cultural archaeology is your cup of tea, hit the like button and subscribe. Let's start where every British day started. The Breakfast Brigade. Starting the day the British way, with fat, fish and fortitude. Now, remember, breakfast in the 1960s and 70s wasn't about health. It wasn't about Instagram. It was about fuel, getting through a shift at the factory, a day on the building site, hours behind the counter. And nothing said fuel quite like dripping sandwiches. Here's what people don't understand about post-war Britain. We were still in the mindset of rationing. Waste was criminal. If Sunday's roast beef left fat in the pan, you saved it. That was just common sense. Every household had a dripping pot, usually by the stove, sometimes an old OXO tin, sometimes proper china with a lid. The ritual went like this. After Sunday roast, you'd pour the hot fat into your pot. The meat juices too. It would cool overnight. By Monday, you'd have 2 layers. The savoury jelly at the bottom, pure flavour. The white, solid fat on top, pure energy. Come breakfast, you'd spread it thick on white bread. A pinch of salt, maybe pepper if you were fancy. That was breakfast, and nobody questioned it. My grandmother kept her dripping in an old OXO tin. Every Monday morning, my grandfather would have his dripping sandwich before heading to the factory. He'd eat it standing by the kitchen window. The tin lasted a week, sometimes 2 if the roast had been particularly fatty. But if dripping sandwiches were quiet, what came next was anything but. Kippers announced themselves. The smell would wake you before your alarm did. It travelled through walls and upstairs. You knew it was a kipper morning before you opened your eyes. If you grew up with kippers, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That smell doesn't leave you. Kippers were huge in coastal areas. Makes sense. Fresh catch, local smoking houses, cheaper than bacon. But they spread inland too. In the 1960s, you could get kippers anywhere. They were considered proper food, nutritious, traditional, British. Some families grilled them. Some boiled them in a jug. There was a whole skill to eating them, picking around the bones without looking like you were struggling. And households were divided. The kipper lovers versus the kipper haters. No middle ground whatsoever. You either waited all week for Kipper Friday, or you ate toast in silent protest. Which side were you on? Be honest. So what killed breakfast dripping and kippers? 3 things happened fast in the late 1970s and early 1980s. First, health concerns. Fat became the enemy. Doctors started warning about cholesterol. Saturated fat was suddenly dangerous. The same food your grandfather thrived on, now it was trying to kill you. Second, convenience culture exploded. Cereal companies flooded the market. Cornflakes, Weetabix, Rice Krispies. Pour, add milk, done. 2 minutes versus 20 minutes for proper kippers. Working parents couldn't compete with that. Third, work patterns changed. Fewer factory shifts starting at 7. More office jobs, more commuting. By 1985, dripping pots were disappearing from kitchens. By 1990, you'd be hard-pressed to find a household under 40 that kept one. Did your family keep a dripping pot? What else did you do with it besides sandwiches? Roast potatoes? Pastry? Tell me in the comments. I'm fascinated by the regional variations, but breakfast was just the beginning. Once the day properly started, British kitchens got down to serious business, feeding families on a budget. And that's when things got really interesting. The weekday warriors. Monday to Friday staples, when What's for Tea had predictable answers. The British week in the 60s and 70s was like a set playlist. You knew what was coming. Monday meant one thing, Tuesday meant another. The whole street operated on a similar schedule. The British week revolved around Sunday roast beef, roast potatoes, cabbage, carrots, the works. That was the anchor point. Everything else radiated from it, and so every Monday with the same sound. The sizzle, that distinctive frying pan sizzle. Bubble and squeak hitting hot fat at 8 in the morning with whatever didn't get eaten on Sunday. This wasn't poverty, this was the system. You deliberately cooked too much on Sunday because Monday's breakfast was already sorted. The name comes from the sounds it made. The bubble of the cabbage, the squeak of it frying in the pan. Every family had their ratio. Some went heavy on potato, some preferred more cabbage. The art was in the crispy edge, that golden brown crust on the bottom. If you couldn't get a proper crust, you hadn't made proper bubble and squeak. My mum's trick? She'd press it down hard with the spatula. Leave it alone for 5 minutes. The patience was part of the skill. In our street, you could tell what day it was by the smells. Some days we treasured, some were endured. And nothing was endured quite like Tuesday's liver and onions. My mum tried to disguise it with extra onions, but we always knew that distinctive iron smell gave it away. Doctors recommended it. Full of iron, they'd say, good for growing children. Your mum believed them. So every Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, depending on your family, there it was, on your plate, dark, dense, with that distinctive smell that made you regret coming home from school. Adults loved it, children hated it. No middle ground. You never met a 7-year-old who chose liver. But men who'd grown up on it, they'd order it at the pub given half a chance. The preparation was an attempt at redemption. Soak it in milk first, reduces the iron taste, fry the onions until they're sweet and soft, make proper gravy, serve it with mash, give you something edible to focus on. Some families added bacon. That helped. The trick was cutting it into small pieces. Mix each bite with plenty of onion and mash. Swallow quickly. Think about pudding, because there was always pudding after liver night. Had to be. Hit like if your heart sank when you smelled liver cooking. I know I wasn't alone. Wednesday or Thursday usually brought stew. Beef stew with dumplings or pearl barley. Cheap cuts of beef, neck, shin, whatever was affordable, transformed through hours of patient cooking. The dumplings were either light as clouds or heavy as cannonballs. Depended entirely on your mum's hand with the suet. What kind did your mum make? Floaters or sinkers? What was your family's weekday rotation? Did your mum have a set schedule? Or was it chaos? Let me know in the comments. And then there was that special little tin, and if you want to understand this era, you need to understand one thing. The tin with the little key, and that tin represented something. Reliability. Fray Bentos corned beef. In an era of limited fridges, unreliable shops and tight budgets, tinned corned beef never let you down. It wouldn't spoil. It lasted for months, years probably, though nobody kept it that long. The ritual of opening it was part of the appeal. that little key attached to the bottom. You'd peel back the strip of metal, winding it around the key as you went, slowly revealing the pink meat inside. If you rushed it, the strip would break. Then you'd need a tin opener. Amateur hour. Corned beef hash was simple magic. Tinned meat, boiled potatoes, onions. Fry it all together until the bottom crisps up. The magic happened in that crisping. The edges would catch, caramelize, transform. From the tin, it looked awful, grey-pink, compressed. But 15 minutes in a hot pan with onions? Different beast entirely. Now here's the twist that'll surprise you. Think corned beef was wartime poverty food we just got stuck with. Wrong. Tinned corned beef was a premium product in the 1960s, more expensive than fresh mince. I've checked the old newspaper ads. In 1968, a tin of Frey Bentos cost 1 shilling and sixpence. Fresh mince was 1 shilling per pound. Families bought it because it was reliable, wouldn't spoil. The tin with the key was high-tech in its day, modern, convenient. We weren't making do, we were choosing it. Of course, not everything was about filling bellies on. Some foods were traditions, rituals. They marked the rhythm of the week in ways that had nothing to do with budgets. And none were more powerful than the Friday rule. The Friday rule, when the calendar dictated your plate. Friday meant fish. Not sometimes, not occasionally, every single Friday, and nobody questioned it. By the 1960s and 70s, most British people eating fish on Fridays couldn't tell you why. Catholic tradition? Most weren't Catholic. Health reasons? Nobody mentioned that. It was just what you did, what everyone did. The practice started as Catholic tradition. No meat on Fridays, remembering Christ's death. Fish didn't count as meat in Catholic law, so fish it was. But the practice outlived its religious origins. It became a cultural muscle memory in Britain, Catholic or Protestant, churchgoer or atheist. It didn't matter. Friday was fish day. The shops knew it, the markets knew it, the chip shops certainly knew it. The mobile fishmonger did his Friday route, same time every week, same streets, same customers buying the same fish. Market stalls would have their best selection Friday morning. Thursday night's catch arrived fresh. By Friday afternoon, every chip shop in Britain had a queue out the door. Every Friday at our local chip shop, Harry's on the corner, there'd be a queue from 5 o'clock onwards. You'd walk home with this warm, vinegary smelling parcel. The paper would be see-through with grease by the time you got there. Friday wasn't Friday without that walk. The weight of it in your hands, the warmth seeping through, the anticipation. Not everyone went to the chip shop, mind you. Plenty of families cooked fish at home, code haddock, plaice, whatever was available and affordable that week. Plain grilled, or fried in batter if you had the energy. Always served with something green, mushy peas, cabbage, whatever needed using up. But let's talk about mushy peas. Fluorescent green, texture like wallpaper paste. Taste that was, well, pea-flavoured paste. We ate them. We accepted them. We still do. Did you actually like mushy peas? Be honest. Remember that statistic from the start? In 1975, over 80% of households ate fish every Friday. By 1995, under 15%. What happened? Supermarkets changed everything, fridges improved, and, most importantly, chip shops faced competition. Chinese takeaways, Indian restaurants, pizza delivery. The mobile fishmonger. He couldn't compete with supermarket fish counters. Open 7 days a week. The system that supported Fish Friday crumbled, and the ritual went with it. But if Friday was governed by centuries-old tradition, Sunday was pure British invention. The Sunday roast, and everything that spun off from it. Toad in the hole, cheap protein elevated through clever cooking, steak and kidney pudding, the winter Sunday alternative. When you wanted something heavier, suit crust, meat and gravy, steamed slowly for 3 hours. Your mum spent half her Sunday making these, didn't she? There was an unspoken understanding about food in this era. Light dishes, salads, quiches, anything delicate were women's food. Heavy, meat-centred, gravy-soaked dishes? Those were men's food, real food, proper food. Steak and kidney pudding was peak men's food. Dense, dark, filling. The kind of meal that required a nap afterward. Did your dad fall asleep on the sofa after Sunday dinner? Mine did. Every week. Was Friday fish night at your house? Were you a chip shop or home-cooked family? Drop your memories below. Now, if all of this sounds impossibly heavy and stodgy, well, you'd be right. British meals in this era weren't light, they weren't delicate, they were fuel. But we had ways of ending these meals, ways that were even more British. The puddings and the sides. The sweet finish and packed lunch squad, desserts, sides, and what we sent kids off to school with. Picture this. It's Sunday afternoon. The kitchen windows are completely fogged up, steam rolling down the glass in rivers. The whole house smells like hot jam and suet. That meant one thing, jam roly-poly. Suet was everywhere in British cooking. Dumplings, puddings, pastry crusts. Why? Because it worked. Suet creates this texture you can't get from butter. Light but filling. And incredibly warming winter food. Every butcher gave away suet, sometimes charged a penny for a big chunk. Using suet wasn't poverty, it was technique, specific to British cooking. Other countries didn't do this. My mum made jam roly-poly every Sunday, like a ritual. Roll out the suet pastry on the kitchen table. Always too thin the first time. She'd gather it up, start again. The jam, last summer's strawberries she'd bottled, spread right to the edges. Then the rolling. Careful. If it splits, the jam leaks out. You get a sticky mess. Into the steamer for 2 hours. The kitchen would fog up completely. You couldn't see out the windows. When it came out, she'd slice it thick. We'd drown it in bird's custard. Had to be birds, the thick yellow kind. But puddings weren't the only supporting act on British tables. There were the sides, the extras, the things that appeared at every meal without fanfare. Boiled potatoes, boiled to death. So soft you could crush them with a fork without trying. Vegetables cooked until they surrendered. Cabbage boiled for 20 minutes. Brussels sprouts until they were grey-green mush. Was this good cooking? No. Did anyone complain? Also no. You ate them anyway, didn't you? This was the meat and 2 veg formula. Protein in the centre, 2 types of vegetable. Usually potatoes plus 1 green thing. Simple, predictable, British. Why did we overcook everything? Partly generational. Our grandmothers learned during the war. You boiled vegetables to death for safety. Partly equipment. Electric hobs weren't precise. Gas flames were hard to control. But partly, we just accepted it. Nobody had taught us different. This was how you cooked vegetables. It wasn't until foreign food arrived that we realised vegetables could have texture. Every house had a sideboard, and on that sideboard sat pickled onions. Homemade if your grandmother was the type, store-bought if not, but present, always. Eaten with cold meat, with cheese, sometimes straight from the jar when nobody was looking. That sharp vinegar bite, the crunch, the sinus-clearing intensity. From pickled onions to cheese and onion pasties, they were everywhere, particularly Northern England. Lunchboxes, shop-bought treats, the school tuck shop. Greggs wasn't a massive chain yet, but every high street had a baker doing pasties. Cheese, onion, potato sometimes. Pastry. Done. Filling, cheap, portable, perfect for a lunchbox. What else did we send kids off to school with? Jam sandwiches, white bread, thick butter, strawberry jam, wrapped in grease-proof paper. That was it. That was lunch. Maybe a piece of fruit if your mum was feeling fancy. An apple. Never anything exotic. There was a lunchbox hierarchy at school. Everyone knew it. Top tier, ham sandwiches, cheese, something with actual protein. Middle tier, egg mayonnaise, sardine paste. Bottom tier, jam sandwiches. Most kids had jam sandwiches. It wasn't shameful, it was universal. The bread would be a bit soggy by lunchtime, the jam would have soaked through. You'd eat it anyway. Nobody complained. This was just childhood. Of course, in the 1980s, cracks were appearing. New foods were arriving, different flavours, spices we couldn't even pronounce, and they'd change everything. The beginning of the end, and one glorious exception. Britain's palate started to wake up in the 1980s, and it started with one dish that changed everything. The first time my dad tried chicken tikka masala in '84, he was suspicious. Foreign muck, he called it, before he'd even tasted it. But my mum insisted. Anniversary dinner, her choice. He took one bite, went quiet, then ate the entire thing without speaking, and he said something I'll never forget. "Don't tell my father I liked that." By '86, he was ordering takeaway curry every other Friday. Chicken tikka masala succeeded because it was brilliant. Familiar, chicken, creamy sauce, nothing too scary, exotic, spices, colour, that distinctive smell. It was a bridge dish, safe enough for cautious Brits, interesting enough to feel adventurous. And it was invented here, Glasgow most likely, though Birmingham and London also claim it. It wasn't authentic Indian food, it was British Indian, created specifically for us. We adopted it, claimed it, made it ours. By the 1990s, it was our national dish, but chicken tikka masala was just the beginning of the change. Fridges improved, massive fridges, freezers, supermarkets took over, Tesco, Sainsbury's, open 7 days. Health fears exploded. Fat became the enemy salt, sugar. We became time poor, both parents working. Baby boomers who'd grown up on liver and dripping, they refused to cook it for their kids. The chain broke, and then the world arrived. Ingredients from everywhere, Thai basil, lemongrass, star anise, things we'd never heard of. Recipe books from around the world, TV chefs teaching us to cook differently, lighter, fresher. Why would you eat overcooked cabbage when you could stir-fry it with ginger? Why dripping sandwiches when you could have avocado toast? Though that came later. You wouldn't, and you didn't. Here's the shocking truth. Most of these traditional British foods we're mourning, they weren't served in British restaurants abroad, even when they were popular here. The world saw roast beef and fish and chips as British food. That's it. They never knew about our dripping sandwiches, our jam roly-poly, our bubble and squeak. We were the only ones eating this way, and we thought it was normal everywhere. It wasn't. It was magnificently, peculiarly, uniquely ours. Do I miss these foods? Some of them. But what I really miss is the community patterns, the mobile fishmonger, the local chip shop where they knew your order, the kitchen skills, making proper dumplings, rolling sweet pastry. These were everyday skills. Now they're specialist knowledge. The predictability, the comfort of routine, knowing what Tuesday meant, what Sunday meant. But what did we gain? Variety. You can eat Thai food, Vietnamese, Mexican, Japanese, all in the same week. Global awareness. Food connected us to other cultures. Time. You don't spend all Sunday making a steamed pudding. You have your Sundays back. Whether that's a fair trade depends on who you ask, and probably how old you are. But why does it matter that we once ate foods the rest of the world would have found baffling? These foods weren't just sustenance. They were the vocabulary of daily life in Britain between the 1960s and 1980s. They told you what day it was, what class you belonged to, where you lived, who you were. They were predictable, sometimes dreaded, often loved, always shared. These foods tell the story of a Britain that existed for just 30 years, then vanished. But I know I've missed dozens more. What foods from this era do you remember that have completely vanished? Tripe and onions, faggots and peas, spam fritters, tinned fruit with evaporated milk? Drop them in the comments. Let's build the complete archive together. If this journey back resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into Britain's forgotten everyday life. We're documenting what's disappearing before it's too late. Thanks for taking this journey with me. See you next week for more deep dives into Britain's past.